Hello YouTube, this is Froogle and welcome back to part 2 of our beginner's fully loaded guide to the Aerosoft Airbus X Extended. We're currently en route and looking at the EFB right now. Let me pop over to the other computer. We are 496 miles out from top of descent, so quite a way to go. But I wanted to take this time while we're en route to really finalize what we're going to do as we come into land. When I chose Gibraltar as the destination, remember we're flying London Heathrow to Gibraltar, I kind of did it on a whim in that I've never flown to Gibraltar and it seemed like a really pretty scenic place to go. I then found out it's actually one of the most challenging airports in the world to land at. Such is life. We're going to keep it as simple as possible because this is the beginner's guide, so the first officer and the captain are both turned on. That's what she said in the airport, in the aircraft, so they're doing all the checklists, managing all the procedures, which means we get to focus just on flying and navigation. And that's really what we're going to look at right now. So the first challenge we have, you'll remember in the last video, we tried to set up the star into Gibraltar and found that we couldn't. Let me show you what's going on down here. So what happened when we did that is it actually selected Gibraltar runway 9, which is the runway we're going to be landing on given the current weather conditions, and it put in a temporary waypoint. There is nothing else we can do. There are no selectable stars. The reason for that I will show you on the other computer. So here we are. You can see where we currently are, just heading towards the northern coast of Spain right now. Let me show you the problem with Gibraltar, and then I'll start working through the solution to Gibraltar. So here's Google Earth. I've already started a search for Gibraltar, so let me do the full search. So you can see Gibraltar is down here. Now the strange thing is, there's a number of issues here. First, this is a British territory. It's also a contested territory. It's right on the southern tip of Spain. Spain thinks Gibraltar should be theirs. Britain says, no, it's ours. So that's a bit of a problem. So there are a lot of different airspaces to navigate. There's Gibraltar airspace or British airspace, Spanish airspace, slightly to the south, really not very far here. That's the northern tip of Africa. So we have African airspace over here. In addition, Gibraltar is actually a military airbase as well as a normal airport. So there are military procedures as well as civilian procedures. We're going to follow the civilian ones. The next problem we have is actually this. We're going to land on runway 09. Now, normally in the normal world, you would think that the best route in there would be to come in from here and fly this way. That's not the case because of the different airspaces. We're actually going to be flying down here, coming across here, then going north and landing on runway 09. The reason that that is a challenge is Gibraltar itself is known as the Rock for good reason. Let me show you why it is called the Rock. That's why it's called the Rock. There is a huge outcropping of rock about 600 feet to the south of the runway. Now, as the winds come over the ridge here and over the peak here, they cause rotating drafts all along the runway. So you're going to have updrafts, downdrafts, crosswinds, all varying all the way down the entire length of the runway, which makes this very tricky. In addition, you don't have a lot of good visibility. As you're flying in from here, you actually have zero visibility on the runway, zero visibility here, zero visibility here, until you're about here, which is 3 miles from the runway. This is a visual approach. Now, we can still fly a lot of it in an automated fashion, but it is a full visual approach. So where normally you have the go-around point, the decision point, which is based on height, at Gibraltar it's based on distance. At 3 miles out, which is right about here, if you cannot see the runway, you are legally obliged to abort, go around and land somewhere else. Simple as that. Now, we've had a bit of a problem trying to record this video in that the weather has not been suitable to land here for a number of days. So this is actually the 4th or 5th attempt to land here because of the weather, and Froogle being a complete uber nerd, rather than try to land anyway and change the weather on the fly, I've actually aborted and landed in Jerez, Spain every time. So hopefully today, 4th time is a charm, we're actually going to land here. Now let me show you what the approach looks like. Here is the approach. Notice there's a couple of waypoints here, Alpha, Bravo. We are going to be coming in at a waypoint called Pimos, which is up here. That's in our flight plan. We need to manually set up Alpha and Bravo. Notice there is an altitude constraint here at or above 3,000 feet. Great, no problem, so we're going to do that. Hopefully Alpha and Bravo are in our database. Actually, they are, but there's actually a few Alpha and Bravos, and we double-check them by this. North 36, 0 degrees, west 0 minutes. We can double check the alphas and the bravos that come up in the flight computer, in the FMS, using these lat-long coordinates. Now, having flown that approach, we then need to get onto the airfield itself. Notice here these dashed lines. Gibraltar airspace, Spanish airspace, restricted areas. It's all very, very tricky. It is very much like threading a needle. It's quite hard. Let me go down here and I'll find you the actual visual approach. Here it is. This is the visual approach. There is another waypoint here called Victor. Normally, if you're landing at Gibraltar, everything will be vectored by ATC. They will tell you fly runway heading blah blah blah, descend altitude blah blah blah. We don't have that luxury. We are not flying with ATC, so we have to use the charts. And the charts are very interesting. Victor, we can be at whatever altitude, but we must be at 1,520 feet, 6 nautical miles from the airfield, holding that altitude to 5 nautical miles from the airfield, then descending to 3 nautical miles from the airport field, at which point we look. If we can see the runway, we're good to go. If we cannot see the runway, then we apologize to the passengers and go somewhere else. The descent is very interesting. What we do is we look at our ground speed. So assuming a ground speed of 140 knots ground speed, we will set up a descent of 695 feet per minute. That will get us at the right altitude at 3 nautical miles when we begin our turn and check the runway is actually there to land on runway 0901. So let's pop back into the aircraft and I will show you how to set this puppy up. It is not particularly easy, but it's not particularly hard either once you've done it a few times. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get rid of this temporary fix that got put in for us. So we'll clear that out. That's all gone now. Last waypoint we have is PMOS. We have a discontinuity, which is just fine. Let's clear that discontinuity. We'll scroll down. Okay, so MAR, PMOS, we're good. Click on PMOS. The next waypoint, according to our charts, is Alpha. Very easy. Put that in there. There are a few alphas. We want the one that is at 36 north, 005 west. That one. After Alpha, the next waypoint is Bravo. We'll put that in. Again, 36 north, 005 west. That is the waypoint we want. And after Bravo, we're going to go to Victor. This is where the fun starts. VICTOR. Put that into the next waypoint. It does not exist. Thankfully, in the Airbus, you can actually set up manual waypoints. I haven't seen any videos doing this. It's actually quite hard to find the information online about how to do this, but I will show you. I've actually already done this, so it's already got a waypoint stored, but I'll go through the motion anyway. I'm going to call this Vict. It will overwrite that name, don't worry about it. Now, lat and long. The lat and long for Victor is northing 36, 00 minutes, 0 seconds. The way we do that is we put in north 36, 00.0, and we are the westing is westing. There's always 3 digits for the westing, so westing 005, 24 minutes and 0 seconds. Click that on. Notice it's giving it a name. I've already actually entered this, so LL01 is the one I entered. It will automatically give it a name, which in this case is LL02. So store, which means now we can go up here and say, actually, it's changed my lat rev from somewhere else that I don't want to be. So let me just go back to the temporary flight plan. From Bravo, we are going to go to LL02, the waypoint that we just entered, that it named and stored. Let's scroll up. There it is. Insert all those changes into our flight plan, and we are good to go. Now, at Victor, we don't have an altitude constraint that we need to be at, but we're going to start entering some. I want to be less than 200 knots, and I want to be at 2,000 feet. So 190 slash, so 190 knots, 2,000 feet. We're over the ocean. We can go lower without issue. We'll put that in right here. Our constraint is now stored. At Bravo, we'll also be slowing down, so we're going to put in there about 200 knots. We'll start slowing down at Bravo, and let's say 2,500 feet. On Bravo, done. So we have our constraints set up now, so we've got a vertical path and a speed path. The aircraft will know how much to slow down and how much to descend to for Alpha and Bravo. What's going to happen is we're going to be flying on autopilot through PMOS, Alpha, Bravo, Victor. At Victor, we're going to be turning off the navigation using this, and we'll actually put in a selected heading of 001, and we'll be managing our vertical rate of descent using the glare shield, which I can't see right now, using this ourselves. Once we actually start the turn onto finals to land, that will be manual, but up until that point, we can actually do it all with the autopilot, which is very, very cool. See you at top of descent, where we'll be setting up the parameters for actual descent. Right, we're about 294 miles out from top of descent. You can see top of descent from this little white arrow on the navigation display. Now, normally about 50 miles out from top of descent, maybe a little bit less, you would start preparing the aircraft for the descent. I'm going to do it now rather than 50 miles because I've got to talk to you and explain what's going on. For those of you that have never seen this, it's actually a very similar process to setting up descent in the 737 NGX, albeit with Airbus terminology and phraseology and everything else. So here's what we do. Go into performance. We're currently in the cruise. It's a managed cruise using a cost index of 20. This is our speed, Mach 0.77, which is pretty cool at flight level 390. Next phase obviously is descent. It's a managed descent. We're going to descend at the same speed. All good there. Now for the approach, this is where we need to enter some data. So the QNH, which is the pressure where we're going to be landing, as opposed to QFE, I think, which is the pressure at the airfield itself. Pressure here, looking on our active sky, weather forecast is 1020. That may change, but we'll put that in. Temperature is a balmy 18 degrees, so we'll put that in there. Wind at the runway is 080 at 14 knots, and it's fluctuating quite a lot. So 080/14. Put that in there. Our transition altitude for Gibraltar is 6,000 feet. Now, our decision height. This is a visual approach, and we're aborting based on visual only, but because of the way the co-pilot and the first officer, when they're automated in this aircraft work, we need to put something in there, so I'm going to put in 200 as a decision height. We're all good. Now we have some speeds as well. 143 is going to be our approach speed. That's really all there is to it. Now, there is another bit that we'll probably need to pay attention to. I'm going to go and set it up right now, is if you have the autopilot and the co-pilot turned on to do all their stuff in the checklists, the co-pilot or first officer will start really complaining if you don't have a go-around altitude set. So the way I'm going to set that in, and it isn't the best way of doing it, but we'll put it in. After the runway, we're going to put in another waypoint, which is Jerez. In fact, I could put in Alpha. Let's put in Bravo, in fact. No, let's put in Alpha. That's safer. So Alpha, that waypoint that we had on the way in, we'll put that in there. That one. And we will set an altitude constraint on there of 2,500. Like so. Insert that. Now we have a go-around altitude set. So hopefully that will stop the first officer from getting in a loop and saying, go around altitude, because we have a waypoint after landing. And that's really all there is to it. All that will remain to be done at this point is obviously check for discontinuities in the flight plan. We don't have any right now. We're currently at Ratas heading towards NEA. Not too far to go at this point. The other stuff you might want to do, when you actually get towards the descent, you will see down here flash up set descent or initiate descent. I'm sorry, I just didn't see the in-flight announcements there. That was kind of off-putting. What you would do is just dial this down to an altitude that conforms to your descent constraints. So we're actually going to set this down to 2,500. It is a stepped descent. The autopilot or auto-flight system will make sure that we hit all the constraints during the step, finishing up at 2,500, which is where we want to be when we start our approach. So you just dial this down to 2,500, left-click it, which sets in a managed descent altitude. If you right-click this knob, you're setting in selected. So you're saying override what's down here in the FMS and instead do things the way I want you to do them as opposed to following a flight plan. So that's all there is to it. We've set everything up. Let me go look at the checklist screen over here. They're waiting for descent preparation. They're going to start descent preparation in 258 miles. So we're a little bit early, but the key was to show you guys what's going on. See you in the descent. Welcome back. We're now about 10 miles or 11 miles out from officially the beginning of our descent preparation. Rechecking the weather, currently we have wind 060 at 14 knots, so it's changed a little bit. We have a few clouds at 1,100 feet, scattered from 1,800 up to 3,000 feet. Temperature is still 18. Altimeter is still 1020. Our visibility, however, is 6 miles, which is just about the minimum we're going to need to fly this approach. So I've updated the FMS down here. Whoops. With the new wind. Transition altitude remains the same. Our V approach speed is 134. So we're going to be flying in at about 140, 145, just to give us a bit of a margin there, which I know is not entirely, fully 100% accurate, but I prefer to do it that way. And we're all good. So in just 6 miles now, the captain and first officer will start their descent preparations. We've already run through everything that they need. So we should just fly through that, and then we can actually initiate the descent. Looking at the EFB right now on the other computer, by the way. Let's see where we are. Whoops. So we're there. Just coming up on, or just past Cordoba. That will be behind us to the right. Heading down now for our final turn, which will take us into the approach into Gibraltar's runway 09. And you can see actually on the EFB right here just how close Spain is to Africa. And I think this top right corner is actually still Spanish airspace, so it's Spanish territory. The rest of it is Africa. So Spain, Africa, Gibraltar.
Descent preparation checklist.
Seatbelt signs.
Auto.
Anti-ice.
R off.
Landing information.
Receive.
Altimeter.
Standard.
Decision height.
Checked.
Check pistol feet.
Okay, so you see now it wants us to initiate the descent, which we will do. As I said, we'll dial this down to about 2500. So there, we'll just roll this and then dial in the 100s component and left click.
Initiate descent. Radar tilt.
And that's all there is to it. We're now in the full descent. So quite a way to go. Looking at the EFB, we've already reached top of descent. It's a bit of deviation from the EFB's flight path. We're 160 feet, 140 feet below the descent path, but that's fine. And we should be at our destination in about 15 minutes. The EFB here usually gets stuff a bit wrong. It doesn't have all of our waypoints, for example, or the speed constraints I've put in. So touchdown is probably more like 25 minutes time. Looking good though. Let's bring up the weather real quick. Yeah, it's remaining pretty constant, which is perfect for us. Alright, I'll cut it here and we'll touch base again once we are flying that full approach. So as we come down on 14,000 feet now, there is the rock on the right hand side of the aircraft. So the runway is actually right here. That is the Rock of Gibraltar right here, and you can already see the coastline of Spain on the other side of the rock. That's where we're going to be flying up. A little bit of turbulence, getting a little bit bumpier as we get down lower. That's to be expected, given the weather forecast right now. It's a good day, it's good weather, it's a beautiful day here in Spain, but a little bit of turbulence. Nothing to be concerned about. Now we're coming up on 10,000 feet. We're actually at 10,500 feet at this point. A thing that worries a lot of newcomers to jetliners is there is a speed constraint at 10,000 feet of 250 knots. You cannot exceed that. It is the law. So the autoflight system will actually level off in order to bleed off some speed. The Airbus is pretty good. We're actually very close to 250 already, but normally it will level off. So you'll see, there we go. Rate of descent is reducing as we drop some speed, and then once we get down to the speed that we want to be down, you'll see the aircraft will reduce speed a little bit more in order to then nose over and pick up some speed and start at normal descent. Nothing to be alarmed by. It happens in most jetliners. Not a big deal. Lights are on. Under 10,000 feet, we have our lights on, ready for landing. Coming up on Alpha, and then we will start our right turn to Bravo, then our manual waypoint of Victor, at which point we'll be doing a manual selected heading mode as opposed to managed heading of 001, and getting ready to land. For the landing, as I said, we're going to do a manual landing. It's a visual approach. We'll use the autoflight system for the approach, but it will be a manual landing. We're going to intercept that localizer radial of 271 so that we know when to turn. The autopilot will be off, it will be a manual landing, but the auto throttle will be on. That's quite common in Airbuses, in that you leave the auto throttle on, let the aircraft manage its own speed. Now we're heading into some cloud here. The temperature outside is plus 23. So we're actually good. We don't need to turn on anti-ice. Normally heading into cloud like this, you would check the outside temperature. If it's near zero, turn anti-ice on. We're not. We're completely fine. Descending now at 1,400 feet per minute at 7,000 feet altitude. We need to be at 2,500 feet in just about 20 miles time. Just under 20 miles time. This always leaves me a little bit nervous as to whether or not we're going to make it. Coast of Spain. Up ahead. Africa on our left. Gibraltar, down there, behind those clouds. So you can see what I was saying about visibility. The clouds are making it worse than it would normally be. If those clouds get out of the way, which they are trying to do, then you'll see the rock obscuring the runway completely. Here comes the rock now. There it is.
Approach checklist.
Southwest 1993, descend to maintain 3000.
Runway is directly behind it.
Checked.
Lighting tables?
Stowed.
Potomac, good morning, Southwest 1602 out
Checked.
of 10,000, descending 4000.
Checked.
Barrel reference?
Standard.
South 1602, Potomac, Baltimore, altimeter 2909 or 2, vector ILS runway 15 right. 2992 and the ILS 15 right, Southwest 1602.
Little bumpy once again, quite normal. 6,000 feet. Just over 4,000 to, just under 4,000 to go. That's our transition altitude, so we should set in our QNH, which is 1020. Whoa, I pressed the wrong button.
Good morning.
Dial that back. Oh, they're doing it for me.
Barrel reference set. Cross-check.
Station 650 Sierra Golf, Potomac, Baltimore, altimeter 2992. Victor current at Martin State, vector LDA 33 approach.
2992, and we have Victor. Thank you, sir.
I think by messing with that, I actually screwed up the cross-check.
Southwest 1993, descend to maintain 2500, turn left heading of...
See, part of the challenge here as well is not only flying the aircraft, but also anticipating what the automated pilot and first officer are going to do. It does make flying the aircraft simpler, but you can screw them up, which I think I might have done, but
1020.
there we go.
1020.
She overheard me. Coming up on Bravo, there is Victor, where we start our turn to 001. We're at 4,500 feet. We want to be at 2,500 feet. Now I'm going to bring out my charts here, looking at the descent path once we get at 5 miles. Again, looking at the ground speed. We're currently 258. We want to be 160 or less on the ground speed at 5 miles.
0 Sierra Golf, contact Potomac 124.55 and ask for a heading off Raven.
I'm not going to mess with the speed at this point. If I were to reduce the speed right now, the aircraft would level off again, and we would not hit the altitudes we need to be at. So I'm going to let it continue down. Then I will manually dial in speeds. Remember our V ref, or sorry, V approach. Let me bring that up down here on performance. Is 133, so we're going to fly it at 145.
2,500 kilos, Southwest cleared for the ILS 15 right, Southwest 1993.
3,500 feet. We are going to make it just about. Got a 10-mile view on the navigation display. Here we go, 3,200 feet. That alert telling us less than 1,000 feet to go for our required altitude, a managed altitude of 2,500 feet. And again, at 6 miles out, we want to be at 1520. So I'm going to reduce this now. I can't dial in 1520, but I can put in 1500. There goes the visibility as we expected. 6 miles visibility at Gibraltar.
Flight attendants, please prepare for landing.
Now notice the navigation display is having us skip this waypoint and start our turn. We will need to manually set in what we're doing here. There it goes. So we're going to set in a manual heading now of 001, which is you dial in 001 and then right click to put it in selected mode. I actually think we turned a little bit too soon there. Coming up on 1,500 feet now, vertical speed is 600. We are slowing down. We need to be slowing down a lot more. So as you approach that 1,500, I'll start, if it doesn't on its own, I will start manually feeding in a speed. Leveling off now to hold 001. Looks like speed's coming down now. It's already set it in at 190. We're coming up on 1,500. You see the rate of descent is reducing. Look at our ground speed, 220.
Flaps 1.
Let's get some drag out now. Now distance, we are 6 miles out. We need to be at 1,520, which we are. At 5 miles out, we start our final descent. Getting very close at this point.
Gear down.
So we're going to want a rate of descent. It's looking like about 800 feet. Watching this ground speed here. 5.2 miles. Ground speed coming down to 160.
Flaps 3.
Let's go and feed in here, 800 feet.
Flaps full.
There's the rock. Oh, that went horribly wrong.
First half of 49, 5,000 India.
Landing checklist.
There we go. 4 miles out. Let's put it onto the navigation
Down
display
and
now.
block.
VOR, I mean.
Ground spoilers,
Checked and armed.
auto brakes,
Medium.
exterior lights,
Do we have
on.
visual on the runway? If we don't have visual at 3 miles, we need to
Set.
abort. We are 3.8 miles. I do not see the runway.
checklist complete.
Should be about there. 3.6 miles.
South is 4896, reduced speed to 170.
3.5 miles.
South is 3361, turn right
1,000.
heading 040.
We are at 1,000 now. Still descending. There is the runway. We have visual on the runway. We are all good. We just need to turn now.
South is
And intercept.
4896 on speed, descend and maintain 2,500. On speed,
Again,
2,500, south of
letting the
48.
auto throttle system manage our speed.
South of 49, descend and maintain
Autopilot
3,000.
off.
Maintain 4,000, south of 49.
Start our turn around now.
3,000.
It's where it gets a little bit tricky for me. Managing the views.
South with 4896, turn left 180 is on the low. Left 180
Shut
is
that
on
up.
the low, left 4896.
A little bit low.
4896, 4 miles from Blabber, 2,500 till established on the low, Blabber, cleared ILS 115 right approach. About 2,500 till Blabber, cleared the ILS 15
A bit of a bump there. We're a little bit low right now. You see 3 reds, 1 white. 2 white, 2 red. Start our descent. Steepen the turn a little.
Turn right heading 130, descend and maintain 3,000, intercept the low.
Too high now, so we're going to bring those down. A little bit bumpy as we expected. Very bumpy, in fact. Quite a hard turn now to try to line up.
Citrus 588, turn right heading 340.
500.
Right heading 340, Citrus 588.
We'll be gentle on that rate of descent. It's currently way too high. We will get a sink rate warning in a second.
300 above.
8 miles from Blabber, maintain 3,000 till established on the low, Blabber, cleared ILS 115 right approach.
200 minimum.
We're at the minimums. We are going to land
Landing.
3,000 till established, cleared ILS 15 right.
on the glide slope now.
100.
Heart thumping.
70. 60. 40. 30.
4896, contact tower
20.
54.
Retard. 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 Retard.
A little bit of a hard
Long
landing.
landing.
There we
Long
go.
landing.
Ground spoilers are up. Reverse green.
900 meters remaining.
Perfect. Let's turn off here and taxi. So that is it. That is the kind of heart-stopping approach into Gibraltar. For the beginner's guide of all things. Beginners because, of course, we were using the automated
After landing.
captain and first officer and checklist. Thanks for watching. As always, if you're not already a fan, check out facebook.com/FroogleSim, where you get information on the live streams and behind-the-scenes look at some of these videos.
Normal.
And if you're not already subscribed to the YouTube channel, please do click on that subscribe button. As always, my name is Froogle. Thanks very much.
APU,
Is on.